The clink of coins wasn't just pocket change, it was the sharp sound of judgment. Every head in the bustling cafe turned. A snicker here, a whispered comment there. But what no one expected was how one quiet man's simple payment would change everything. Old Mr. Henderson settled into his usual routine at the Morning Brew Cafe, just like every Tuesday. A man of few words, his worn cardigan seemed to blend into the cafe's familiar hum. He ordered the simple breakfast special, eggs, toast, and coffee, a ritual that brought quiet comfort to his week. When the time came to pay, his hands, weathered by a lifetime of unseen work, carefully reached for a small canvas pouch. Out tumbled a cascade of mostly nickels and dimes, precisely counted. This wasn't stubbornness. Every single coin represented a deliberate sacrifice, saved from a jar tucked away in his modest apartment. These weren't for him. They accumulated, coin by painstaking coin, for his granddaughter's tuition, a dream he clung to with quiet, fierce dedication. Or perhaps for the medication of a struggling friend, a necessity often overlooked. Each coin was a tiny act of love, a piece of his enduring hope. Sarah, the young waitress behind the counter, sighed audibly. Her eyes, already tired from the morning rush, rolled upward. Another coin counter. The line stretched long, and the constant clink, clink, clink of small change felt like a deliberate act of delay. Her patience, already thin, frayed further. She tapped her foot impatiently, her gaze fixed on the slow, meticulous process. "Are you serious? Nickels and dimes?" Her voice, though not a shout, carried across the counter, cutting through the general chatter. Heads turned. A man at a nearby table chuckled, nudging his companion. A woman, sipping her latte, openly stared. "People like you really hold up the line," a gruff voice called out from the back of the queue. "This isn't a bank." The manager, peeking from the kitchen doorway, said nothing, a silent accomplice to the unfolding scene. Mr. Henderson didn't look up, his lips pressed into a thin line, betraying nothing. His hands, though slightly unsteady, continued their work. One coin after another, each one placed with precision. He completed his count, neatly stacking the small pile of coins next to a crumpled receipt, then stepped back, his posture stiff, but his eyes unwavering. "Done?" Sarah's tone was flat, dismissive. She swept the coins into the register with a clang that seemed to amplify the humiliation. "Next!" she called out, already looking past him. Mr. Henderson simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her dismissal. He turned away, his gaze fixed on his corner booth. The coffee there was undoubtedly cold, the eggs congealed, yet he would consume every bite. Waste to a man who had once subsisted on a single protein bar for days while danger loomed, remained utterly unthinkable. Mr. Henderson sat back at his corner booth, the cold ceramic of the coffee mug, a stark contrast to the warmth he now lacked. His mind drifted, not to the clatter of plates around him, but to distant echoes. These hands, now trembling slightly as they clutched the cup, once held something far heavier than coins. They had repaired equipment under a hail of gunfire, navigated treacherous terrain, and offered comfort to fallen comrades in places most people couldn't even pronounce. He had been a soldier, a guardian, living through moments of intense bravery and unimaginable sacrifice. The cafe buzzed with laughter and casual chatter. Families shared stories, silverware clinked, and steaming coffee mugs were refilled at every table except his. Young couples talked loudly about weekend plans. None of them knew the man who sat quietly, absorbing the cold indifference. A lifetime of defending freedoms, of enduring unimaginable hardship, now reduced to this quiet ritual in a forgotten corner where the world moved on, oblivious to the history seated among them. From his worn leather wallet, he carefully pulled a small plastic pill organizer. Heart medication, morning dose. He discreetly tipped a tiny white tablet into his palm, not wanting to draw more attention to himself. It was a private act, a necessity, a reminder of time's relentless march. 60 years ago, the military had instilled in him a precision, an order, habits that remained when so much else had faded or been taken away. At the counter, Sarah laughed with another server. "The coin thing is getting ridiculous," she grumbled, her voice carrying clearly. "Last week, it was all pennies. Like, just get a bank account already." Her coworker snickered. Maybe he's saving his dollars for something really important. And he was. Those hard-earned dollars, his every carefully saved $5 bill, went directly into his granddaughter's college fund each month. A small amount, but it was all he could spare from a fixed income that barely covered his humble apartment and essential medicines after his wife passed. At a booth nearby, a teenage boy whispered to his father, his voice just loud enough to reach Mr. Henderson's ears. "Why is everyone staring at that old guy?" The father's dismissive reply came quickly. "Some people just think they're owed respect." Mr. Henderson didn't react outwardly, but his grip tightened on the coffee mug, the slight tremor in his hands more pronounced. He'd earned his stripes. He'd earned respect. But today, it felt like it had been stripped away by thoughtless words. Mr. Henderson pushed himself slowly from the booth, his back protesting with a familiar ache. He reached for his cane, the polished wood smooth from years of constant use. His hand then found his cap, a faded olive green, embroidered with a single humble word: veteran. He simply wanted to leave, to escape the lingering stares and the uncomfortable silence that seemed to have fallen over his corner of the café. Dignity, even in retreat, was important. Just as his hand touched the door, a voice, calm but commanding, resonated from a corner booth near the window. "How much is his meal?" The café, previously a cacophony of clattering plates and hushed whispers, fell into an unnatural silence. Sarah, startled, turned from the counter. "Excuse me?" she mumbled, her usual briskness replaced by confusion. A man in his late 50s stood up. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, revealing a subtle row of service pins glinting on his lapel. His presence seemed to fill the room, drawing all eyes. "I asked," he repeated, his voice unwavering, "how much the gentleman's breakfast cost." Sarah, flustered, stammered, $6. The man walked purposefully toward the counter, his steps measured and confident. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and laid it flat on the counter beside the register. "That covers his breakfast," he stated, his gaze sweeping over the astonished Sarah. "And everyone else's tip today." The cafe manager, who had until now remained a silent, shadowy presence in the background, finally emerged from the kitchen, looking utterly bewildered. "Sir," he began, a tentative note in his voice, "you don't need to—" "You're right," the man interrupted, his eyes meeting the manager's directly. "I don't, but I will." He then turned, his gaze falling upon Mr. Henderson, who stood frozen by the door. A flicker of recognition, a spark across decades. "Sergeant Henderson?" he questioned, his voice softer now, tinged with respect. Mr. Henderson blinked, a slow dawning of realization. The midday sun, streaming through the cafe windows, seemed to illuminate a past long buried. His hand trembled, not from weakness, but from the sudden rush of memory. "Lieutenant Colonel Miller?" he replied, the name feeling both foreign and profoundly familiar on his tongue. "Retired now, sir, but still your subordinate." The quiet acknowledgement of rank, the enduring respect. The cafe held its breath. Sarah, the young waitress, stood frozen, the $100 bill a stark contrast to the small pile of coins she had just swept into the register. Her face, moments ago etched with impatience, now paled with a mix of confusion and dawning realization. The respectful exchange between the two older men, the military titles, the profound shift in the room's atmosphere, it was all clicking into place. The weight of her earlier dismissiveness, her cutting remarks, pressed down on her. Slowly, deliberately, Sarah's hand moved to the knot behind her neck. With a soft rustle, she untied her apron, slipping it off her shoulders. This wasn't an act of defiance, but one of profound humility and remorse. She looked at Mr. Henderson, her eyes welling up. "I am so incredibly sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I I didn't know. Lieutenant Colonel Miller, seeing Sarah's genuine distress, offered a gentle correction. "It's Sergeant," he stated kindly, then turned his gaze to the manager and the stunned customers. "Do you know what it takes," he announced, his voice carrying conviction, "to make a man survive 3 tours of combat, endure countless dangers, and still walk into a diner with quiet dignity? Respect. And he deserved it from the moment he walked through that door." He turned back to Mr. Henderson. "Sergeant Henderson, you taught me that no soldier ever eats alone. This place needs to remember why." Miller then turned to the flustered manager. "From this day forward," he declared, his voice firm, "Sergeant Henderson never pays for a meal here again." The manager, nodding rapidly, quickly agreed. Then, Miller pulled out his phone. Within minutes, the cafe door opened again. 4, then 5, then a dozen more men and women entered. They were of various ages, some with canes, one in a wheelchair, all wearing subtle military insignia or faded unit caps. Fellow veterans, Mr. Henderson's comrades. They converged on his booth, forming a protective, respectful circle. One man, limping slightly, clapped Mr. Henderson on the back. "You carried me out of a blast zone, Sarge. Time I carry this tab." Another, his eyes twinkling, reminded him of a story from decades past. "Remember that night, Sarge? You talked the supply sergeant into giving us extra rations." A young family, who had earlier giggled at the coin man, watched in awe. The daughter whispered, "Are they heroes?" Her mother, tears in her eyes, nodded. The real kind. Photos were taken, conversations buzzed, and news began to spread rapidly beyond the cafe walls. The atmosphere transformed. What was once a place of everyday transactions became a testament to honor and silent sacrifice. At Quiet Soldier Stories, we believe every quiet hero deserves to be seen and respected. If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment below, sharing your own experience of someone who deserves dignity. Let's make sure no quiet act of service goes unnoticed. Subscribe to Quiet Soldier Stories for more tales of courage, resilience, and the everyday heroes among us. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story.